G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of 4K Garage. So the other day my car had its annual MOT test and unfortunately it failed. So I want to take the episode to talk about that, why it failed, and more importantly wheel alignment. It's going to mostly be an audio based episode, so grab a drink. I'll put obviously little bits on screen and just enjoy. But let's start off by explaining the reasons why my car failed its MOT. Fairly simple one, failed on tyre wear. I've been driving the car now a couple of months. And done around 3,000 odd miles. And as you know, from the brand new wheels, they're also brand new tyres. But in just 2 months, in 3,000 miles, I burnt through the set of front tyres, which is pretty shocking. And it's all mainly down to one thing, and that was the alignment. So you remember a few weeks ago, I did a video explaining how I was going to fix the car's handling issues. Truth be told, the bits I did in that episode, although would help any kind of handling issues, any kind of tram landing, bump steering, all that, it didn't fix it, and it was still largely down to the alignment. I've got my alignment specifications, so I'll talk about camber, caster and toe, go into details about those, and just explain where my car had issues, so hopefully if you guys have any kind of similar problems, then you can get it sorted. So as I previously mentioned, my car failed its MOT due to a lack of tyre tread depth on the front, namely the inside corner. Which, of course, a few of you are probably already thinking, oh, that's his camber that's causing that. And you'd be half right, of course. Due to, quite a bit of camber on the front, the inside edge of the tyres has worn down far quicker than the outside, which is to be expected. But often camber isn't the only killer of tyres, and in conjunction with a high amount of toe, that is what can absolutely destroy tyres, apart from doing gnarly burnouts. So as you can see up on the screen now, this is essentially what my before and after settings for my alignment was. So a few of you that know alignment settings are probably reading this and thinking, oh, there's some pretty big issues here, and you wouldn't be wrong. As you might remember from my previous episode where I fit all my suspension arms, I made sure to do a little string alignment on the car to make sure the rear toe was as zeroed out as possible. And that was because previously I'd burnt through a set of rear tyres. So I made sure to do the rear toe, and as you can see, I mean, it's not zero, but it's not far off each other. I think for a little string alignment, I did an alright job. And of course, my rear tyres aren't dead. But truth be told, I didn't do anything like that for the front. After fiddling around with the, replacing the bushings and doing those steering rod ends, steering toe arm ends, I never bothered to fix the front toe or measure it or anything like that. When the car was going through its MOT, I also had an alignment done on the car, and I should have had this done much, much sooner. So let's go through these settings, where they were, how they affect the car in general, and what I have now. So caster is essentially a measurement of the angle at which the steering point is in conjunction to the center point of the wheel. Most cars often have a strut which leans back rather than directly at a 90-degree angle up from the center of the wheel. To keep it in simple terms, most of the time you want more caster. The reason for that is because it offers more self-steering. When you go through a corner and you take your hands off the wheel, and the car will tend to steer itself back to the center point of the steering wheel. It works not too dissimilar to caster wheels, hence why they're called what they are. And so that's fairly simple. As you can see previously, the car had 5.4 degrees on one side and 5.9 on the other. And now I've got a tiny bit more, 6 and 6.2. And the OEM specifications are anywhere between 5.8 and 6. So I'm actually a little bit over the OEM specifications. But as I say, it's generally a case of the more the merrier. The more you have, the more it center steers, the more stable the car feels. If you were to let go of the steering wheel, it would just drive in a straight line. Next you have camber, and I'm pretty sure anyone watching this video already generally knows what camber is. Of course, it's the angle at which the wheel tilts vertically. Negative camber being that the top of the wheel is tilting in towards the center of the car, and positive camber being that it's tilting out towards the outside of the car. And generally what this does in terms of handling is you'd always, if you're into your track driving, racing, track driving, anything like that, you're probably gonna want a little bit of camber, not necessarily as much as I have, anywhere from like say 1.5 to 3.5, 4 degrees of camber. And the reason for that is because as you go through a corner and the inside wheel is going through its compression stages, as of course you're leaning into that side, the wheel tends to roll across, and when you have a little bit of negative camber, you actually then gain the full contact patch width of the tyre. So your inside wheel gets a bit more grip and it pulls you around the corner better. So having that negative camber means that around the corner you have more grip. on the front or rear end, wherever you have that camber essentially. So a couple of degrees is perfectly reasonable. It's not going to kill your tyres, it's not going to wear them down too much. It will a little bit unevenly, but not to the point where it's going to be a big issue. And in general, it just makes your car handle nicer around corners. It's better for track driving, better for racing, and so on. Allows you to dial in, if you've got a really corner heavy track, allows you to dial in a bit more corner grip. Whereas if you've got a track that's all about straight line speed, then you might want a little bit less camber because you're just not going to utilize it. And finally, we come into toe, the big one when it comes to my problem of going through tyres and my problems with tramlining. So toe is the measurement of the angle at which the tyres face in relation to, say, if you drew a line down the centre of the car. With toe in, meaning that the front of the tyres are pointing inwards towards the centre of the car, and toe out, meaning they're pointing out. And toe in and toe out have their pros and cons either way. Toe in, for example, gives a nice, safe, stable, straight line handling. The wheels are both pointing ever so slightly towards each other, and therefore, once again, if you were to let go of the steering wheel, the car should, assuming that the road is relatively flat, will just drive in a straight line without any dramas and so on. Just you have good straight line stability. Toe applies to both front and rear, so you can have your front end nice and stable and your rear end nice and stable, and the car's just nice and safe. So car manufacturers more often than not will put in a little bit, tiny bit of toe in, both front and rear, just to make cars safe and so they're not going to kill you. So toe out is the opposite of that, of course. The wheels are ever so slightly facing outwards, and I'm no expert, of course. This whole video is just information I've learned. I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. But I struggle personally to see the reason for having toe out on the rear of the car, unless maybe your car has four-wheel drive or some kind of trick all-wheel drive steering. I struggle to see personally the reason for having toe out on the rear of the car. Whereas toe in is nice and stable, toe out can often, especially in the front, lead to much better turn-in grip. So as you turn into the corner, the inside wheel actually assists more in turning around the corner and giving you that nice grip to steer through it and come out the other side without understeering. Generally, toe in gives nice straight line stability, whereas toe out gives nice cornering. Now, as you can see from my alignment, I had terrible toe in. 1.7 degrees of toe in on one side and 0.8 on the other. That's massive. And in conjunction with the camber, it just shredded my tyres in no time at all. They dialed that back massively to just 0.05 degrees, which is within the OEM specifications, a tiny bit of toe in, giving a nice, stable, safe feeling without destroying my tyres anymore. Likewise, on the rear, much like I said earlier, a tiny bit of toe in from my previous string alignment, and that was dialed back as well because it was a bit too much, but nowhere near as bad as the front, so my rear tyres are still safe. And so when I also got my tyres changed, I also changed to these Michelin Pilot Super Sports rather than the Federal 595s I have. And they have a much more pedestrian tyre tread, I would say. They're still sports tyres, they're still summer tyres, so they're still nice and grippy. But they're just not as near as slick as the Federals are, which is them here. And the reason for that is just because in standing water, they were sketchy, to say the least. I wasn't much of a fan of it. And I mainly picked these tyres because of the availability in various sizes, the excellent price they are, but I think I'm just going to bite the bullet, try something a little bit more pricey, see how I get on with these, and then when it comes to the rears I might try a set of Michelins on the rears. Just one of those things, you live and learn. You live and learn when it comes to wheel alignments, you live and learn when it comes to tyre choice, so I'm just keen to experiment and see how I get on with these. So there we have it, a little episode talking about wheel alignment and my woes with handling and tram lining and anything like that are now all, I'm happy to say, are all sorted. Having driven the car a few miles since then, haven't done too much driving, but I have to say it's night and day. It's incredible. The whole thing feels a lot more confident in its handling. Doesn't tend to pull from side to side if it finds a divot or a dip or a bump or a little bit of camber in the road. Just feels a lot more together, feels safer, feels just nicer to drive in general, really. So I'm really pleased with how that's turned out, and I urge anyone that is like me, a little bit stubborn about getting a wheel alignment done, if you've done a decent amount of suspension changes, if you changed, you know, from normal struts to coilovers or airbags, if you've changed suspension arms, if you've done toe arms, if you've done steering rod ends, anything, or in my case, if you've done literally all of that, just get a wheel alignment done. You're going to save yourself any kind of hassle when it comes to how your car feels and how it drives, and you're going to save yourself money on tyres. Because at the end of the day, that's what destroyed those tyres. Bit silly of me. It's made the simple job of getting a wheel alignment done that much more expensive, which I wasn't really planning for, which isn't any fun, but there you have it. So thanks for watching once again, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do all that good YouTube stuff, as I always say. Stay tuned for more. Hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, have a good one. Cheers. Bye-bye.